My mother's guest bedroom smells exactly like it did when I was 16, a mixture of her cheap perfume and the cigarettes she thinks I don't know she still smokes. The twin bed creaks under my weight, the same pink floral comforter from my teenage years mocking me with its faded roses. 29 years old, and I'm right back where I swore I'd never be. The ceiling has water stains now, spreading like the mistakes I've made, and I trace their patterns with my eyes while trying not to think about what led me here. But that's all I can think about. How I became her. How I destroyed everything good in my life for something as pathetic as a thrill. From downstairs, I hear her laughing on the phone with her latest boyfriend. Some bartender named Rick who's probably half her age and will leave her within 6 months like all the others. The sound makes my stomach turn. Not because of Rick or whoever comes after him, but because I finally understand why she does it. The constant search for something new, something exciting, something that makes you feel alive even when it's killing everything real around you. I used to hate her for it. When I was 9, my world split in two. Before the divorce and after. Before, when Dad would come home from his job at the shipyard and swing me around the kitchen while Mom cooked dinner. After, when he'd pick me up for weekend visits with eyes that looked dead and a smile that never reached them. I knew Mom had done something terrible. Kids always know, even when adults think they're protecting them with vague explanations. The hushed phone calls, the way family friends would look at her with disgust, the way Dad couldn't even say her name without his jaw clenching. She'd cheated. Broken our family for some supervisor at the hospital where she worked nights. "Your father was a good man," she told me once when I was 12 after 3 glasses of wine. "Too good, maybe. Sometimes good is boring, Celia. Sometimes a woman needs more than good." I remember staring at her with such hatred. Dad wasn't boring. Dad was stability and bedtime stories and fixing my bike when the chain came off. Dad was safety. And she'd thrown him away for what? For exciting? For more? The man she left him for didn't even stick around. Gone within a year, on to the next nurse or whoever caught his eye. And Mom just moved on to the next one and the next, each relationship more toxic than the last men who yelled, who drank too much, who looked at teenage me in ways that made my skin crawl. But they were exciting, I guess. They gave her that more she needed. Dad never recovered. I found out when I was 18 that Mom wasn't his first heartbreak. His college fiancé had cheated too, with his roommate. He'd forgiven her, tried to make it work, but she'd done it again. When he met Mom, he thought he'd finally found someone different, someone who would value the steady, quiet love he offered. Instead, she confirmed what he'd started to believe, that he wasn't enough, would never be enough. He never dated again, not once in 20 years. Just went to work, came home to his apartment in Signal Hill, and lived like a ghost. I'd visit him every week, try to convince him to try again, but he'd just shake his head. "Twice is enough, sweetheart," he'd say. "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. There won't be a third time." I swore I'd never be like her. Never hurt someone the way she'd hurt him. Never throw away something real for something temporary. I made that promise to myself every time I saw Dad sitting alone at his kitchen table. Every time Mom brought home another loser. Every time I watched what betrayal could do to a good man. I kept that promise for a long time. David came into my life when I was 22, fresh out of Cal State Long Beach with a business degree, and absolutely no idea what to do with it. He was 37, established, working for the city in their planning department. We met at a coffee shop on 2nd Street where I was struggling through job applications on my laptop. "That seat taken?" he'd asked, gesturing to the chair across from me. The place was packed, so I nodded, barely looking up. But when I did look up, I was struck by how kind he looked. Soft brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, a gentle smile, clothes that were professional but not trying too hard. He reminded me of Dad, actually. That same steady presence. We started talking when he noticed my CSULB alumni mug. Turned out he'd gone there too, years before. One coffee turned into two, then lunch, then dinner. He was so different from the guys I'd dated in college, the ones who were all talk and no substance, who'd ghost you after a few hookups, who made you feel like you were competing for their attention. David was present, interested. He remembered things I told him, asked follow-up questions, made plans in advance instead of hitting me up at midnight. When he kissed me goodnight after our fourth date, it was gentle, respectful, like he was asking permission even as he did it. "I really like you, Celia," he said. "I want to do this right." And he did. Everything right. Met my friends, introduced me to his, took things slow physically even though I could tell he wanted more. He was careful with me, like I was something precious. After years of watching Mom cycle through men who treated her like she was disposable, it was everything I thought I wanted. When he proposed 2 years later, on the beach near the lighthouse, I said yes, immediately. Of course I did. He was everything a woman should want. Stable, kind, devoted, financially secure. He'd never cheat, never leave, never make me wonder where I stood. I'd won the lottery, found a good man who would love me forever. So why did forever start feeling like a prison? It started small, little things that shouldn't have mattered. The way he chewed his food too carefully, how he always wanted to plan everything weeks in advance, the predictability of our sex life. Wednesdays and Saturdays, same position, same routine, same "I love you" whispered after like he was checking off a box. He was gentle, too gentle maybe. Treating me like I might break, never losing control, never making me feel, I don't know, desired? Not just wanted, but needed? Like he'd die if he couldn't have me right that second? "Is everything okay?" He'd ask if I seemed distant. Did I do something wrong? No, I'd tell him, "No, you're perfect." And he was. That was the problem. I first saw Javier at the gym in Belmont Shore. David had bought us a couples membership, though he rarely used his. Exercise wasn't really his thing. He preferred walks on the beach, mild and measured like everything else about him. But I went religiously, needing the endorphins, the burn in my muscles, something to make me feel alive. And there was Javier, one of the trainers, all shoulders and swagger and the kind of smile that made you forget you were married. "Need a spot?" he asked one day when I was struggling with the bench press. I should have said no. Should have found a different gym. Should have recognized the danger in the way my pulse jumped when he stood over me, muscles flexing as he helped guide the bar. But I didn't. I said yes. And yes again when he offered to write me a program. And yes, once more when he suggested one-on-one sessions. "Your husband's a lucky man," he said during our third session, watching me do squats in the mirror. "He is," I agreed, but it sounded hollow even to me. "Doesn't work out though, huh? Seen you here a lot, never seen him." "He's busy," I lied. David wasn't busy. He was home, probably reading or watching documentaries about urban planning. Being good, being stable, being boring. I started lying about how long I was at the gym. An hour became 2, then 3. I'd tell David I was taking a class, getting coffee with a friend after. Traffic was bad. He believed every word because why wouldn't he? I'd never given him reason to doubt me. The first time Javier kissed me was in his car after a session. We'd been talking about music. He was into reggaeton, had been playing it during our workout, moving his hips in ways that made me forget proper form. "You've never been to a real club, have you?" he'd asked. And I'd laughed because no, David and I didn't do clubs. We did wine bars and dinner parties and couples game nights. "I could take you," he offered. "Show you what you're missing." "I'm married," I said, but I didn't move away when he leaned in. "I know," he said, and kissed me anyway. It was nothing like David's kisses. This was hungry, demanding, his hand in my hair pulling me closer. I kissed him back with 7 years of pent-up frustration, 7 years of being treated like china when sometimes I wanted to be treated like a woman who could handle being desired. "This is wrong," I said when we broke apart. Yeah, he agreed, then kissed me again. That's how it started. Stolen moments in cars, in the gym's storage room, eventually in his apartment in Downey. He was everything David wasn't. Spontaneous, passionate, rough when I wanted rough, sweet when I needed sweet. He made me feel 22 again, instead of pushing 30 with a mortgage, and a husband who scheduled our date nights in his planner. The guilt was crushing at first. I'd go home to David, let him kiss my cheek, serve me dinner he'd cooked, tell me about his day, and I'd want to confess everything. But then he'd do something, use his napkin too precisely, laugh at his own mild joke, suggest we watch another documentary. And I'd remember why I was doing this. I needed more. Just like Mom had said. God, how I hated that she was right. But Javier wasn't the only one. Once I'd crossed that line, it became easier. The bartender at the place in Naples where my book club met a divorced dad from my spin class. My coworker's brother, who I met at a happy hour. Each one different, each one offering something David couldn't or wouldn't give me. I became an expert at deception. Different email accounts, a secret credit card, lies that flowed so easily they scared me. Part of me liked how easy the lies came. The rush of being two people. One for David, one for myself. It made me feel powerful. And a little bit free. I'd delete texts, clear my browser history, keep stories straight about where I'd been and with whom David never questioned any of it. Why would he? I was his good wife, the woman who'd never hurt him the way others had been hurt. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with such love, such trust, and the guilt would nearly break me. But then the weekend would come, with its predictable routine. Farmer's market Saturday morning, dinner with his parents Saturday night, lazy Sunday with the newspaper and meal prep for the week, and I'd feel like I was suffocating. "We should take a trip," he suggested one evening. "Maybe Europe? We could plan it for next summer. Save up, make an itinerary." An itinerary? Of course he wanted an itinerary. "That sounds nice," I said, thinking about how Javier would probably just show up at my door and say, "Pack a bag," and we'd drive to Vegas or Mexico without a plan in the world. I started to resent David for being exactly who he'd always been. Resent him for loving me so steadily. Resent him for not noticing that I was slowly becoming someone else, someone I'd sworn I'd never be. Part of me wanted him to catch me, to force the issue, to feel something other than that steady, measured contentment. He found out on a Thursday. I was supposed to be at a work conference in Anaheim. I'd told him about it weeks ago, shown him the fake registration I'd mocked up, kissed him goodbye that morning like any other day was. But I wasn't in Anaheim. I was in a motel in Lakewood with Martin, a musician I'd met at a bar in Bixby Knolls. David had left work early with a migraine, decided to surprise me by driving to Anaheim with soup from my favorite place, because that's the kind of thing David did called the hotel where I was supposedly staying. Found out there was no conference, no reservation, no wife. He used Find My Phone. I'd forgotten we'd set that up years ago for emergencies. I was in the shower when Martin started yelling. Came out wrapped in a towel to find David standing in the doorway with his phone out, recording everything Martin scrambling for his clothes, me frozen like a deer in headlights. The tacky motel room with its water-stained ceiling, and the kind of bedspread you don't want to think about too hard. David didn't say a word. Not one word. Just looked at me with eyes that reminded me so much of Dad's after Mom left. That same dead quality, that same light going out. Then turned and walked away. By the time I got home, my things were in boxes on the lawn. The locks had been changed. My key turned uselessly in a lock that no longer recognized me. I sat on the porch steps, calling his phone over and over, watching it go straight to voicemail, until the neighbors started staring and I realized what I must look like. The cheating wife, locked out, getting what she deserved. I called my father. He answered on the third ring, and just hearing his voice made me start crying. "Dad, I need you to come get me. David We had a fight and—" "Don't lie to me, Celia." His voice was tired. "David called me, told me everything." The words hit like physical blows. Of course David had called him. They'd become close over the years, bonding over their shared quiet interests. Baseball, history, documentaries, the kind of steady love that didn't need words. "Dad, please let me explain." "You sound just like your mother." I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, just sat there on the steps with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to my father's disappointed silence. "I'll come get your things," he finally said, "but you're not coming to my place." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Your mother's, I suppose. Seems fitting." He hung up. My father, who'd never hung up on me in my life, who'd always been my safe harbor, hung up like I was a telemarketer interrupting dinner. He showed up an hour later in his old pickup truck, loaded my boxes without looking at me, worked with the same methodical care he applied to everything. When I tried to talk, to explain, he just shook his head. "I need you to understand," I said, following him to the truck. "I felt trapped, like I was missing something. David is wonderful, but he's... He's what?" Dad finally looked at me, and the disappointment in his eyes was worse than anger would have been. "Too good to you? Too faithful? Too much like me?" "That's not what I... Your mother said the same things, almost word for word." He closed the truck bed with more force than necessary. I used to wonder if it was something about me, something lacking that made women need more. But watching David, good man, better than me even, and still not enough for you. "Dad, please." "I spent 20 years alone because of women like you and your mother, 20 years afraid to trust again, and I watched you grow up swearing you'd never be like her, promising you understood what she took from me." He climbed into the truck. "Turns out the apple doesn't fall far from the tree after all." The drive to Mom's house in North Long Beach was silent. 20 minutes that felt like hours, watching familiar streets pass by, each mile taking me further from the life I'd destroyed. When we pulled up to her small rental house with its dead lawn and peeling paint, I saw her watching from the window. Dad unloaded my things onto her driveway without ceremony. When he finished, he stood by his truck for a moment, looking older than his 58 years. "I love you," he said quietly. "You're my daughter and I'll always love you. But I can't look at you right now. Maybe not for a long time." Then he left, and I was standing in my mother's driveway with my life in boxes, finally understanding how she must have felt all those years ago. Except she'd had me to think about, a reason to move forward. I had nothing but the wreckage I'd created. "Well," Mom said from the doorway, cigarette in hand despite promising me she'd quit. "Guess you're not so high and mighty anymore, huh?" I wanted to scream at her, blame her for showing me this path, for normalizing the search for more, for being the example I'd sworn not to follow but somehow had. But what was the point? I'd made my choices with eyes wide open, knowing exactly what I was risking. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of living in my childhood bedroom, listening to Mom cycle through her latest drama with Rick or Randy or whoever, job hunting, because I can't afford my own place on my salary alone. David filed for divorce immediately. No negotiation, no counseling, no second chances. He had video evidence of my cheating, and California's no-fault divorce laws meant I wouldn't get much anyway. "He's being ridiculous," Mom said one morning over coffee. "One mistake and he throws away a marriage? Men and their egos." "It wasn't one mistake," I admitted. "There were others." She raised an eyebrow. "How many others?" 4, maybe 5. "Jesus, Celia." Even she looked shocked. "I only cheated on your father once." But once was enough, wasn't it? Once was all it took to shatter a good man's faith in love, to destroy a family, to set patterns that would echo through generations. I've tried calling David, left messages apologizing, explaining, begging for just one conversation. His lawyer sent a cease and desist letter. The divorce should be final in 6 months. He's already moved on, according to mutual friends who won't talk to me anymore. Dating some teacher from Huntington Beach who probably appreciates his stability, his kindness, his scheduled date nights. Good for her, good for him. He deserves someone who'll see him as enough. Dad still won't see me. I've driven by his apartment a few times, seen his truck in its usual spot, the lights on in his living room where he's probably watching the History Channel alone, 20 years of solitude, and I gave him proof that he was right to choose it. That opening yourself to love just means opening yourself to betrayal. I think about David finding someone new and wonder if he'll ever fully trust her. If he'll check her phone when she's in the shower, question her gym sessions, wonder about late nights at work, if I've turned him into another version of my father, a good man made suspicious by a woman who needed more than good. The worst part is I understand now why I did it. It wasn't really about sex or excitement or whatever I told myself. It was about power. The power to be wanted by multiple people, to have secrets, to live outside the boundaries of being someone's good wife. Mom felt powerless with Dad, I think. He was so good, so steady, that there was no room for her chaos. So she created some. And I did the same thing. Took a man who loved me completely and punished him for it. There's no fixing this. No redemption arc where David forgives me and we work through it. No chance of Dad looking at me again without seeing Mom's betrayal reflected back. No way to undo the moment David stood in that motel doorway and watched the light go out of his eyes. I've become the cautionary tale I used to tell myself. The woman who had everything and threw it away for nothing. The mother I swore I'd never be. Living in the house I swore I'd never return to. Surrounded by the consequences of choices I swore I'd never make. Sometimes, late at night, I hear Mom on the phone with whatever man is currently in her life. The flirtatious laugh, the promises, the same patterns playing out over and over. And I wonder if this is genetic, this inability to be satisfied with good, this need to destroy what's stable in search of what's exciting. Or maybe that's just an excuse. Maybe some of us are just built in ways that hurt everyone who tries to love us. David's lawyer called yesterday. He's offering a clean break. I keep my car and personal belongings. He keeps everything else. No alimony, no drawn-out battles. More than fair, considering. The David I knew would do that. Would be generous even in his pain. Would handle this with the same measured calm he handled everything. I'll sign the papers. Give him the clean break he deserves. Maybe he'll find someone who appreciates what I couldn't. Maybe Dad will eventually forgive me, though I doubt he'll ever trust me the same way again. Maybe I'll figure out how to be better, though I'm not sure I believe people really change. Not at their core. For now, I'm here. In this room that smells like my mother's perfume and my own failures, listening to her laugh at Rick's jokes downstairs. Both of us proof that patterns repeat, that damage passes down, that some people are just meant to hurt the ones who love them most. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. It landed right at the roots, poisoning the ground for anyone who tries to plant something there again.